Hey guys, welcome back to the Lifestyle School podcast. If you're new here, this podcast is all about helping you understand your body a little bit better, especially when it comes to metabolic health, hormones, weight regulation, and why so many people are doing, quote, all the right things and still not seeing results. We talk a lot on this show about blood sugar regulation, insulin resistance, fasting used correctly, building muscle, and creating a lifestyle that actually supports your biology instead of fighting it. So, in today's episode, it's really a really important one because we're going to talk about estrogen dominance. We're going to talk about what it actually is, how to recognize it in your body, and why it's become so incredibly common in modern life. And I want to be clear that this isn't just a episode for women; it's also for men. And because I think when you hear estrogen, you think, oh, well, this is for the ladies, but guys, this also includes you. So we're going to kind of clear up a lot of confusion around phytoestrogens, if you've heard that term before, versus xenoestrogens, because these two things I think are often lumped together and they should definitely not be. Okay. And so my goal for today is not to scare you or overwhelm you. It's to help you understand what's happening so you can make informed, grounded decisions that actually move your health forward. Okay. And as always, before we dive in, if you find this, actually, I don't always say this at the beginning of my episodes, not maybe as always, but before we dive in, I would like to say if you find this podcast helpful, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share an episode with someone who might need it. That really helps this message reach more people to help them along their health journey. And I usually, save this for the end, but if you want to go deeper on any of these topics, I do have a course called Lifestyle School for Weight Loss. That's an 8-week course, self-guided, that I offer on my website, www.hopefulcoaching.com, as well as an 8-week personalized coaching program that I offer alongside the course if you want more personalized one-on-one coaching. So I wanted to put that out there. It's the new year. A lot of people are thinking about how they can take things to their next level with their health. And I would love to be a resource for you if you're needing more help on that. And then before we get into the episode, guys, quick disclaimer, I'm not a medical doctor. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional. Especially if you have specific concerns or health challenges before you make any major dietary or lifestyle changes. Okay. And then as I have been reminding you more recently, I want to let you know that my online supplement store is officially open. So if you've been wanting high quality supplements you can trust, this is where to get them. Every product in my store is third-party tested for quality and purity, which is unfortunately something you're guaranteed when you buy supplements from places like Amazon. Honestly, I would never do it. Or if you're grabbing them at like a local grocery store, health food store, or even a GNC. Okay, these are the same professional grade supplements products that I use and the ones I recommend to my clients. And it's an easy way to support me and the Lifestyle School podcast, if you're already spending money on supplements. So if that is something that you want to do, if you want to support the podcast in that way, you can head over to my website at www.hopefulcoaching.com. Yes, you have to do the W's. Unfortunately, I still haven't gotten that figured out. But once you go over to my website, in the top right corner, you'll see a tab that I think says store. And it says shop or store. And click on that button. It will take you to the supplement site. If you want to place an order, you will need to use a special code just for my listeners. It's 104567. Once again, that code is 104567. And you can place an order there. And if you want to know exactly where to start when it comes to supplements, if maybe you're not sure what to do regarding supplements, go listen to episode 43 of the Lifestyle School podcast, where I walk you through my core 4 supplement recommendations and why they matter for metabolic health. Okay. So with that, guys, let's dive in to this episode on estrogen dominance. Okay. So first, let's define what estrogen dominance actually is. Estrogen dominance is one of those terms that I feel like gets thrown around a lot, but rarely explained well. Um, Most people, I think, assume it just means you simply have too much estrogen, but that's not actually the full story. And that misunderstanding, I think, causes a lot of fear around food or supplements or even our own body. And so, what estrogen dominance actually means is that estrogen signaling outweighs progesterone signaling. These are like the two main hormones women have is estrogen and progesterone. Men still have a little bit of these as well, but these are like the predominant female hormones. And it just means that estrogen signaling outweighs progesterone signaling. Okay. Estrogen and progesterone are meant to work together. We need both. Estrogen is stimulating. It tells our tissues to grow, to divide, and store. And progesterone is more of a calming hormone. Okay. It stabilizes estrogen's effects, it supports sleep, and it protects the nervous system, and it keeps estrogen activity in check. Okay. And when progesterone is low or estrogen signaling is excessive, estrogen dominates. Okay. And here's something I want you to hear clearly. You can be estrogen dominant even when estrogen labs are technically, quote, normal. And that's why I think so many people feel dismissed or confused when it comes to this topic. And so there are three major drivers of estrogen dominance, and most people have more than one going on at the same time. So the first and most common driver is low progesterone. Progesterone is extremely sensitive to stress. And, if you're like the majority of the population, you're probably overstressed, right? Chronic physiological stress, poor sleep, undereating, overexercising, and blood sugar instability all increase cortisol demand. And when cortisol demand is high, progesterone production often gets sacrificed. Okay. And this is why estrogen dominant symptoms so often show up during times of stress or during perimenopause. And if you didn't check out the recent episode we did on perimenopause, you should go back a couple episodes and do that. Progesterone is usually the first hormone to decline long before estrogen drops. Okay. And the second driver is impaired estrogen clearance. Okay. So the first one is low progesterone. The second one is impaired estrogen clearance. So your body is constantly producing estrogen, and that's normal, right? The liver and the gut determine whether estrogen gets broken down and eliminated or whether it gets reabsorbed and recirculated. So this is where detox pathways really come into play. We also did a recent episode on detoxing. Go check out about 10 episodes ago, I want to say. When liver detox pathways are sluggish or when gut bacteria is imbalanced, maybe secondarily to fiber intake being low, or, if our alcohol intake is high, estrogen sticks around longer than it should. And in many cases, estrogen dominance isn't about overproduction, it's about poor exit. Okay. And then the third driver is where modern life really changes the conversation. And that's excessive estrogenic signaling from our environment. Okay. So, really, three main levers: low progesterone, impaired estrogen clearance, like your body can't clear out this hormone due to bad detox pathways, gut bacteria, low fiber, too high of alcohol. Or the third driver is excess estrogenic signaling from our environment, meaning our environment is stimulating estrogen. And this is where we need to slow down and explain xenoestrogens properly. Okay. So before we talk about xenoestrogens, we need to clear up phytoestrogens because they're often blamed for problems they didn't cause. Okay. Phytoestrogens are plant-derived compounds that can interact with estrogen receptors. But to be clear, they are not estrogen. They don't become estrogen in the body. They bind weakly, and they preferentially bind to estrogen receptor beta, which is associated with regulatory and protective effects rather than aggressive growth signaling. Okay, and that's a really important factor. And this means that phytoestrogens behave differently depending on the hormonal environment. In low estrogen states, like postmenopause, they can gently support estrogen signaling. And in higher estrogen or estrogen dominant states, they can actually block stronger estrogens from binding. Okay. And so I want to be clear when we're talking phytoestrogens, that's modulation, it's not disruption. And I want to take a second to talk about soy specifically. Soy is where the conversation, I think, usually derails. And I want to be clear that I think quality really matters here when we're talking about soy. Okay, so traditional soy products, things like tofu, tempeh, miso, edamame, are minimally processed. They contain things like fiber, protein, micronutrients, and phytoestrogens within a whole food matrix. Fermented soy in particular can support gut health, which actually improves our estrogen metabolism, which is really important, right? However, ultra processed soy is a completely different category, and they should not be confused with each other. Soy protein isolates, which you see on a lot of protein drinks that you're going to buy that are pre-made, soy oil, soy lecithin, and many plant-based meat substitutes are highly refined. They're inflammatory, they're stripped of fiber, and often consumed in large amounts by metabolically unhealthy individuals, if we're just being frank, right? And this can cause issue, but the issue isn't soy, it's the ultra processing combined with insulin resistance and poor gut health that cause the issue with soy and estrogen dominance, estrogen clearance. And so let's not blame tofu while ignoring, things like blood sugar dysregulation and the ultra processing of like this, the ultra processed forms of soy, which are the real driver of issues with soy. Okay. So to be clear, if you are wanting to eat soy, if you've dealt with estrogen dominance, if you're eating real traditional whole soy foods or fermented soy, these are not the problem. It's the soy protein isolates, the refined oils, the lecithins, the ultra processed plant-based foods. Those are the issue. Okay. Now I want to transition over to talking about xenoestrogens and how they're different, why they're different. So xenoestrogens are synthetic. They're man-made chemicals that mimic estrogen in the body. Okay. This is important. Xenoestrogens are not hormones. Okay. They are chemicals. However, they behave like hormones by binding to estrogen receptors in your body. Your body was not created with these compounds in mind, and it does not recognize them the same way it recognizes your own hormones or plant compounds. Okay. Xenoestrogens are chemical in nature. They come from things like plastics, pesticides, industrial solvents, personal care products, fragrances, food packaging, nonstick cookware, and things like thermal receipts. Thermal receipts, guys, are so bad. Once they enter the body, they can bind strongly to estrogen receptors. And when I was talking about estrogen receptor beta for soy, well, these connect to estrogen receptor alpha, which drives cell growth and proliferation. Okay, so unlike natural hormones, they are not regulated by feedback loops. They are not easily broken down. They accumulate in fat tissue and they persist long term. And so this means they can increase estrogen signaling without raising your estrogen levels on a lab test. And remember how we mentioned, like, you can still be estrogen dominant and your labs could look totally normal. And that's why this becomes such a problem. And that's why, someone can have normal estrogen labs and still experience estrogen dominant symptoms. And this is really, you know, why the phytoestrogens in soy and the xenoestrogens should never be grouped together. So just to differentiate, phytoestrogens are weak, they're food-based, and they're temporary. Xenoestrogens are really strong, they're persistent, and they're really disruptive to our hormones. And phytoestrogens often act as a buffer while xenoestrogens act as amplifiers. Okay. So, fear of plant foods while living in constant contact with things like plastics and chemicals, I would say it would be a completely backward way of thinking when it comes to the issue of estrogen dominance. And, you know, at the beginning of this, I said, we're not just talking about women here, this affects men too. Um, because men are increasingly experiencing estrogen dominance as well, even though it's rarely framed that way. In men, excess estrogen signaling can show up as low testosterone, reduced muscle mass, increased belly fat, fatigue, mood changes, fertility issues like low sperm count or slow motility, and difficulty losing weight. And the drivers are the same, okay? Insulin resistance, excess body fat increasing aromatization, which is something that we've done, I think almost a whole episode on, if you look back at the podcast, aromatization, a xenoestrogen exposure, as well as impaired liver clearance. Okay. Estrogen dominance is not about gender. It's about our environment plus our metabolism. And unfortunately, you know, if you look around your environment, like plastics are everywhere. You know, people are drinking out of plastic water bottles. All of our food comes in plastic. It's, if you like, you know, I just went to Costco today and it's like, oh my goodness, do we have to put every little thing that we eat in plastic, right? And then everything is sprayed with pesticides. It can feel like really, really frustrating. So that's why we have to pay attention to this environmental factor, and we need to be aware of it and take action. And so one of the most important pieces of this conversation is insulin resistance, and the insulin, I should say, the insulin resistance and estrogen connection here. Okay. Because insulin resistance doesn't just affect blood sugar, it reshapes hormonal signaling. And when insulin is chronically elevated, several things happen. First, insulin increases aromatase activity. And just like a quick synopsis, it's aromatase activity is an enzyme that converts testosterone into estrogen in fat tissue. Okay. So, gentlemen, this is why this is a big deal for you guys. Aromatase enzyme converts testosterone into estrogen. And this means more body fat plus higher insulin equals more estrogen production in males and females. Okay. Second, insulin resistance promotes fat storage, and fat tissue becomes a storage site for xenoestrogens. Okay. The more insulin resistant someone is, the more estrogenic load their body tends to hold on to. Okay. Third, insulin resistance disrupts ovulation in women. When ovulation doesn't occur regularly, progesterone production drops. And without progesterone, estrogen's effects go unchecked, right? We need that balance of progesterone and estrogen, right? We need them both. We just don't want too much of one or the other, or too little of one of the other, right? Fourth, insulin resistance burdens our liver, okay? The liver is responsible for estrogen detoxification, and when it's overwhelmed by glucose, triglycerides, alcohol, and inflammation, our estrogen clearance slows. Okay. And this is why chronic calorie restriction, overexercise, and stress often make hormone symptoms worse, not better, because you can't fix estrogen dominance without addressing blood sugar regulation and insulin resistance. Okay. So, hopefully, what you're realizing is everything we talk about on this podcast is connected. Our metabolic health is so central to all of these other things and health issues that we talk about. So, I want to give you some hope when it comes to, you know, changing this. And it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. it doesn't, you don't have to be perfect to make huge progress when it comes to fixing the issue of estrogen dominance. And I actually don't think I ever said, like, what are the signs that maybe you're estrogen dominant? Some of those things include like really bad PMS, horrible periods, lots of cramps, mood swings, crazy cravings, a hard time losing weight, PCOS. All of those can be related to estrogen dominance. And everything we do in lifestyle school, everything I teach on this podcast is going to help with estrogen dominance. And what happened, like how we're able to reduce our estrogenic load, comes back to those 3 levers. But first thing is, lowering daily exposure and supporting clearance of that is foundational, right? So doing simple shifts, not heating our food in plastic is a great place to start, right? Removing synthetic fragrances from our house and our products, replacing nonstick cookware, buying organic when we can, simply simplifying our personal care products, trying to go for a cleaner version, eating enough protein and fiber to support our digestion and our clearance. All of these small things that we literally talk about every week on this podcast are going to compound over time, and they're going to help you with the issue of estrogen dominance. And, it's not about detoxing harder. And, if you haven't checked out the recent podcast we did on detoxification, you should. It's about putting less stress or less load on the system, your detox system specifically. Okay. Because, if you deal with estrogen dominance, doesn't mean you're failing or that you've done something wrong or like a personal failure. I think so many times we internalize the issues that we deal with as like something that like, oh, something's inherently wrong with me. It's just a signal that your body needs better metabolic support. It needs improved clearance and those detox pathways. And it probably means we need to look at like, what is our environmental burden and how can we lower it? And if you want help implementing this in like a structured, sustainable way, you can join me inside of my course, Lifestyle School for Weight Loss, or apply for my 8-week personalized coaching program. Where in the personalized coaching program, I work with people one-on-one to address like all of these specific issues based on what your personal needs are and where you're at in your health journey. And if you are interested in that, you can head over to my website, www.hopeflatcoaching.com, or reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, and I'd be more than happy to send you a link to check it out. But with that, guys, we're going to wrap things up. If this episode has helped you, I would love for you to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, leave a comment on the episode about what stood out to you. If you could share it with a friend, this is the best way for me to just reach more people. Because honestly, I hate social media. I hate being on there, and I've been doing a really poor job of being on social media over the last couple of months. But I really appreciate your time here. I appreciate you listening. If there's a way that I could support you more, always feel free to reach out. I love hearing from you guys who listen to the podcast. So with that, guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. And I will see you on the next episode of the Lifestyle School Podcast.